By the way, thank you all so very much. And not just the folks that are in here, but it was so damn gratifying to sit in that auditorium to see today, this morning, and see how far this community has come. I mean, for those of us that have been here for decades and decades, when there was no cyber branch, we talked about information assurance, or even before that, information security, right? But we knew then that we would be here. It's actually taken longer to get here than some of us might have thought. But it is tremendously gratifying to see the energy, the enthusiasm, the passion that all of you have, and the fires that you're lighting with the folks that you work with, because we need it. So just a couple quick things. So we're in the danger zone here just a little bit, because I am between you and lunch. Okay. And so those of you that know me know that I am not short of words. There are no words that I would not want to say. I could filibuster here if we need that. If you ever need anybody to filibuster, I'm your guy. All right, so, and Joe, I work closely with Joe Billingsley. And by the way, Joseph Schaefer, could we give him a hand? There at the beginning. Matt V, over here on this end of the room, and I'm going to leave some folks out, but one of my early students, and really, made a difference. I was accusing him of making mistakes in a former life, and it was actually somebody else. But he was there at the beginning, and it's so gratifying to see students that I've had the opportunity to work with in a variety of settings and go off and do amazing things. Paul Stanton, although he didn't acknowledge it, we turned Paul Stanton into a cyber guy when he was at West Point. He was still an infantry officer, and he didn't become a cyber officer until later, which he relayed the story this morning. But we turned him to the dark side, and for that we can be very proud. Now, Joe, I told Joe early on, I said, look, don't plug me into the agenda, but if you have somebody fall out, which always happens, I am your guy. So that's what happened. 2 days ago, Joe said, hey, Rags, you're on, and here's your topic. And okay, so, and then somebody this morning said, where are your slides, Rags? And I said, no slides. I don't do slides. And they said, oh, so you're going to wing it. And that is absolutely not the case. Was that not the case? This is not me winging it. This is well prepared, well conceived, thought out, structured, outlined. And the topic they gave me was to talk about some of the history. And it would be really gratifying to talk about the history. I mean, there's some really interesting things that have transpired. Cyber defense exercise comes to mind. Bringing virtualization to cyber training, which is the first ever, never done before in the history of the world, was done first at West Point in the early 2000s. A variety of exercises and competitions, courses, internships, having some influence on the Scholarship for Service program, the CYSP program, now the Cyber Academy program at DoD, Clark. So lots of initiatives that I have had the good fortune to work with some really amazing people, and we could talk at great length about that. I believe, that sharing credit is what, deflecting and sharing credit is what should be done. So to the extent that I could do so, and is Rick Howard with us here? There he is. And I spoke him into existence. Okay. So I was Rick Howard's platoon leader in 1979. Okay, he was a cadet in class of 82. I was West Point class of 81. And Rick was one of those founding father guys. And so he is now, we brought him into this community. He's always been there, but now he's in the MCPA family. You should consider reaching out to him. And frankly, for me, what I want all of you to do, we're going to talk about not the history, because that's the topic they gave me, and I don't take direction well, as is. I want to talk about something that I bring a great deal of passion to, and it may not even sound like it belongs in this new and emerging research and development track, but I'm here to say it does, and perhaps you'll get that by within a short period of time. The topic I wanted to talk about more than anything, because I'm now in a position where I am fun employed. I have no boss except for my beautiful bride of 42 years. And I get to do the things I want to do with the people I want to do and work on the topics I want to, contributing to national security and economic prosperity, right? And I'm loving life. right? But one of the topics I've been focused on, because I learned quite a bit in my last role that I had the good fortune and frankly honor and privilege to serve out of the White House in the Office of National Cyber Director, was on workforce topics. So what I want to talk to you about today is skill-based hiring and skill-based practices. Sounds very HR-ish, doesn't it? Like, oh, that's not our jam. That's not what we do, right? But we have to get this right. And the beautiful thing about this community, we're going to get it right for the cyber community. And those practices will be promulgated if we do this right across the whole of federal firing. Federal firing. That was we got some of that going on. Federal hiring practices, and frankly, the private sector has already moved far and fast with skill-based hiring. So, skill-based hiring. Who has come into that term? Who has not heard that term of late? Is there anybody? So a few. So many of you have. So what are we talking about? What is the basis of skill-based hiring or skill-based practices? Anybody? And if you don't shout out, I will call on you. I am not. So anybody at all? Skills. What's that? Hiring based on skills. Hiring based on skills. See, there you go. I mean, really, and it sounds almost ridiculous on its face. And they also other names they talk about competency based or performance based. But it's about focusing on what the candidate can do, right?
Not whether they have a degree.
Pardon me?
Not whether they have a degree.
Not whether they have a degree, not whether they have a credential, not whether they've had a job with a fancy title. Because, now, first of all, here's a question now that's yes or no. Is skill-based hiring new?
No.
The vernacular may be. But how long have we been doing skill-based hiring?
Since time immemorial.
Yes! See, actually, you stole my thunder here. Because normally people say, well, you know, I don't know, in the 20s and the 50s something. The caveman who invented the wheel, he's going to be setting up production. He's got to hire staff. And he probably went to the caveman gym, I guess, to get some buff, guy, right? But he was doing a skill-based hiring practice. Right? He wanted to ensure that as they built out this make the wheel factory, that his employees would have the skills necessary, and he or she engaged in some sort of a hiring practice and looking at the skills. So it's frankly always been mostly about the skills. But why have we not done true skill-based hiring up to the present day very much? What's the real challenge?
I mean, universities wanted to produce people, and so they forced us to think that we have to take people with some sort of degrees. So that's what influenced how we hired.
So I'm going to put forward the argument that we had to use proxies because that's all we could do. Right? So if somebody has a credential, and there's some communities that it's all about the credentials, and the credentials are real, and they're viable, and they're consequential, and if you have that credential, you are allowed to do whatever that thing is in your particular area. I don't think we're there yet for cyber, certainly, for a variety of reasons, but we use a proxy. And those proxies included things like we would look at a resume and they would talk about their educational experience. They would talk about their job experiences. They would talk about even some of their interests. And then we would often have an interview. And if you really think about it, in an interview, what you're trying to tease out is a variety of things, but mostly you're trying to make sure that they can at least articulate that they can perform some of those roles or functions, right? So it ultimately has always been about that, but we've been forced to use proxies.
So Rex, one other point though, that's assuming the well-intended ethical hiring domain.
Yes.
Right? Because I would also argue that there are also some of those proxies were actually artificial barriers to entry for certain groups.
Oh, 100%. And I was once we teased out what skill-based hiring, like what are the benefits, the obvious benefits that we're going to see. And one of them is absolutely. So my son is a fighter pilot. He did not have perfect vision. So they finally woke up. They used to have, for years, this artificial barrier to entry that you had to have 20/20 vision. But when they were really honest, they never wrote this down, it was simply everybody wants to be a fighter pilot. So let's artificially reduce the field and say you got to have 20/20, and it did. They changed that now that you can have your eyes corrected, that sort of thing. It was an artificial barrier. And right now, oftentimes degree requirements create artificial barriers. Credentialing requirements in some spaces create artificial barriers. So we're now actually into discussing some of the benefits that one sees, and they're enormous. If we do not just skill-based hiring, but I have frequently used the expression skill-based practices, because they carry, frankly, I believe, into the workplace, right? So what are some of those benefits? So we've teased out, we're going to open the aperture now. If you can demonstrate that you can do what's required for this job, then we're going to hire you. Right? Irrespective of how you acquire those knowledge and skills. And we know that in the here and now, there's a vast array of ways that one can acquire those skills. I mean, YouTube alone has become one of the most educationally focused platforms. Whoa. That was almost not good.
Your age, you gotta be careful about that. You don't want to break a hip.
Exactly. We don't need another one. All right, so there's a variety of ways you can acquire the skills, and if you can demonstrate to me as a hiring manager that you have that skill, I frankly should not care how you acquired it, provided you did so in a legal and ethical manner. All right, so you're following the thinking. So we're going to open the aperture in terms of the population. We're not going to have artificial barriers. What are some of the other benefits? And there's been vast array of studies that have been done, some published, some not published. So what are some of the other benefits that come to mind? Yes?
You have folks who can think differently.
You have folks that can think differently, and you also know, you have some specific knowledge of what they actually can do as a manager. That's a very valuable, and importantly, what they can't do. Right? If this job has these skill requirements, and they have 8 of the 10 requirements, and they happen to be the most qualified candidate, you bring them in, but you know you have a moral imperative as a leader to make sure that you provide them opportunities to acquire those skills to round out their skill set in the context of the job they're doing. Other benefits.
Ready to work. Ready to work.
Ready to work, right? Day one, if you've got the skills, or the majority of the skills, we can put you right to work, and don't spend as much time with the onboarding process or just frankly throwing them in the deep end of the pool. That is not always the worst thing to do, because people adapt, but it also is not the most efficient or effective way. Other benefits that come to mind.
Lower attrition?
Where is it? Boom. Absolutely. When it's authentically and genuinely embraced, it reduces uncertainty. Because now you know. When all of us have had performance evaluations, some of us no longer get them. But and we hate them, you know, let's be just be really honest. We hate writing them, we hate, preparing for them, and frankly, and it actually introduces some stress into some issues that are not enhancing our productivity. But in a truest sense, if you could be continuously assessed on the degree to which you have a specific skill at various levels of expertise, right? I mean, there's basic, intermediate, and advanced levels of expertise for a given task. What I'm now doing is I'm parsing the various ways that we talk about these units, right? So, what's that?
Work roles?
Well, so work roles each have associated with them knowledge, skills, abilities, and tasks. So that's DCWF. Anybody here never heard of DCWF? Okay, You have to know DCWF chapter and verse. You really do, and it's only getting better. Do you know NICE? Does anybody not know NICE? Okay, the NICE framework, which actually was an offshoot of DoD work. So these are not, they're often characterized as being very separate and distinct and different. There's some different terminology, frankly. They don't have KSATs in the NICE framework. They have another acronym that's, I don't think has tasks. And then there's the CAE program, NCAE program. Anybody not familiar with that? Okay, so having gone through 6 successful CAE designation processes, I know it in chapter and verse, there they use knowledge units. So it sounds like, oh, we got a lot of different conflicting frameworks. Actually, they're actually not that far apart, right? So NICE has work role categories. They have 5 of them. They used to have 7. They broke off 2 and gave them to DCWF. So the cyber effects and cyber intel is now under the auspices of the Defense Cyber Workforce Framework. They have on the DCWF side, they have 7 or 8 work role categories. They have workforce elements. Also, it's another sort of dimension that they use. And there's, I think, 70 plus 74. It's just talking to Mark Gorick. 74 work roles in there. NICE has about 40 plus work roles, very specific work roles. Now, how many people are out there that plug perfectly into any of those, let's say 40, say 100 or 110 different work roles? Nobody. And that's an important distinction to realize. When you get a job or a role, it's not like, oh, here you're doing this work role. Because it almost always is kind of a Frankenstein thing, right? Where you're either this role and this role kind of mashed together, or 3 elements of this work role, because residential organizational differences will necessitate that the hiring manager needs to tailor those work roles to match what they're doing on the current job. So I'm encouraging all of you, first of all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. This is a topic I bring as much passion to as I possibly can, because I really think it's going to make a huge difference if we continue to make the kind of progress we've been making. I give Mark Gorick and his team tremendous credit. I give Rodney Peterson up at, they're working the DCWF piece and the 8140. Who's not heard of 8140? Rick, come on, man. We're really important. And I love, and by love, I mean love, 8140. The way that has evolved, because there used to be, you flip to the back and you want to go to the table, right? And the table said, hey, you want to have these levels of, you want to have these, they have 3 different categories of foundational, residential, and continuing ed sort of stuff. And then it was a matrix of 3 by 3, so it was, basic, intermediate, advanced. What was in the blocks in that matrix? Previously, it wasn't 8140, it was 57 something.
8570 certification.
And a what?
8570.
Oh, 8570, there you go, good. Yeah, I have just so much dead brain cells available now at this stage of my life. I try to purge. So what was in you got a 3 by 3 matrix, what was in the cells? Certifications only. It was like the only path that you could use to demonstrate you had this expertise, either pre-hiring in the job. And that is just flat wrong. Right? There is a vast array and perhaps better measures that could be brought to bear, and that's what this 8410 is now doing. It's opening up the aperture to include there are other ways to provide evidence that you have that KSAT, right? And so let's talk real quickly about the hierarchy. Hey, Alice, how are you? Another heroine in the field has joined us here. What are some of the ways that, let's talk about the least predictive to the most predictive. So let's talk about things that are not really very good, perhaps are proxies for determining whether or not somebody can do a certain skill. What are some of the, yes?
I would argue a degree in some instances.
A degree. I mean, I am proud of the fact that I was associated with the Institute of Higher Education for decades, at West Point, at Texas A&M, and I'm proud of that. And I believe there's great things happening on colleges and universities across this country. But you cannot assume, even with a fully accredited program, that somebody that has a computer science degree, for example, and it's not the only degree that it comes to play, but it's one that comes immediately to mind, has the skills they need to do the job. You could hope, you would have a higher degree of expectation. It's not no evidence. I mean, to get through some of these programs, we're going to get to some of the less very specific technical skills as something that I think is one of the challenges we got to address. You can assume things about somebody that's graduated from Carnegie Mellon with a computer science degree. You can make some pretty good assumptions, but they're not hard and fast, and you could be wrong. They could be, there's a lot of group projects, and we all know every group has a pizza getter. Right? We know these pizza getters, and they find their way into the workplace. And we love them. We love our pizza getters. But perhaps they don't have all the skills and the knowledge. And I did not call out CJ, and I'm now going to, because CJ was my right-hand guy, right? And there was some dark days. Let's be honest. And CJ delivered the goods. I'm here to, I was just at West Point the day before yesterday at a Viceroy event, and another thing, I've got a great deal of pride of helping to get that helping to make that concept real. He made the program real with the folks at Griffiths, and if you don't know about Viceroy, it is awesome. It is amazing. Nearly 2,500 students have been positively influenced by that program in the 3 or 4 years that it's been in existence. He was also helpful and instrumental in the creation of the Senior Military College Institute program, which also I was proud to have had some influence on the NDAA Section 1510 something, words, thank you. And the University Cyber Consortium out of NDU, Joe Billingsley actually helped put that together. But I want to if you don't know about Viceroy and you have anything to do with the Department of Defense, you should learn about it. And certainly the Senior Military College Institute program, another thing that we brought into being during our time together at the Pentagon, give some thought to that. Now, so back to the hierarchy, and I'm sensitive, so I have to walk out that door. I do. This is the good news for all of you. I have to walk out that door at 11:57. Because I'll be like, where is Rags? He's got a thing to do in the main room. So it's to your benefit. So this hierarchy. So we've got degrees and credentials. What else? Time. Oh yeah, so experience in a given job. I mean, when you do some jobs and you do them well, there's some evidence that you could do the roles in a subsequent job. Right? I mean, it is evidence. Is it perfect? No. All right, so let's have more consequential evidence. What's out there available to us now that maybe wasn't available in the past?
Cyber ranges. Cyber
ranges, right? So where's Joe Suff? He's not here. He's moved on. So certainly, putting somebody in an environment where they actually have to do the thing that they have to do in their role, I can't imagine a better way to assess. And I put that at the pinnacle, right? And the beautiful thing about where we are now is both for an interview and in continuous assessment, keeping people's, their sword sharpened. You could continually assess because now capture the flag exercises, variety of different approaches, Jeopardy style, force on force. But we now have the wherewithal to rapidly generate unique Jeopardy style CTF challenges for you with a push of a button. And They're unique and new because, you know, with CTFs, you read the write-ups and you can figure out how to do them, and there's the potential for cheating. But if it's a brand new challenge that is specific for you, that is, and I say CTF, we think offense. We always think offense. By no means is that a requirement. It's just simply think of CTF, capture the flag, where you're given a thing to do. You've got a certain time limit, you've got resources available to you, could be individual, could be team, and you have to demonstrate that you can do that thing. We're in a place now where that's well within the realm of the possible, and that's very specific evidence that you have a specific skill, right? And we're there. So what I'm going to encourage all of you to do, as in whatever role you're in, look for ways to bring skill-based practices into practice in your roles with the people you work with on your left and right. Not just about hiring. We know we're going to do a better job of hiring. And now I'm going to say something, because I can say these kind of things now because I didn't have to get my remarks approved by the White House. They were quite concerned when Rags would go out when there was reporters around. But I'll say this. Think of a group, and I'm going to call out one that we all love and know and admire, veterans. Do veterans have a preference in hiring?
Yes.
Yes. Should veterans have a preference in hiring? I think we can all agree, for the services and their sacrifice, that veterans should probably get a leg up. But are we in some cases setting them up for failure? Joe, I'm watching the clock here, man. Okay. Are we setting people up for failure if they get a veterans bonus, but they have less skills than a more qualified candidate, which is real? I mean, that is a real thing. But we haven't fine-grained assessed the degree to which they have the skills. We know they have fewer skills. You see what we're potentially doing? We could be setting those individuals up for failure or subpar performance. So to the extent that we could incorporate some of the skill-based approach and overlay the veterans' advantage on that, at the very least we have this. We have more knowledge. We have more knowledge, so if Sam or Sally, a veteran, gets a job, we know that they perhaps have a deficit for these skills, and then we have an imperative to make sure that we provide them as leaders. We provide them the opportunity to acquire those skills so they could perform well in their job, right? So you see, all of this, works well together if we bring a skill-based approach. Now, what is the fatal flaw, as I'm going to wrap up with this laser focus on skills? Yes?
You may not get the best person.
What's that?
You may not get the best person.
You may not get the best person because it's not perfect.
And also, the skills is, in order to find skills, you have to be very nuanced.
Yes.
What you're looking for basically a potential.
Yeah, and it's hard,
yes.
But it's getting easier and better. Yes.
I think there's a gap in coachability because there are plenty of people who don't have the skills. But
Okay, good. Boom. So you've answered it, and we were gonna have a discussion that I would love to. And follow up. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Please send me your input on this topic, because this is an area that I will continue to focus on. But what I want to highlight is this. When we think skills, the KSATs, the KUs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities, we almost always go right to the technical skills. And this is where I think we can do better, and I talked to Mike Gurk. They're going to incorporate this to the DCWF. There are non-technical skills that are so important. So there are some work roles that are not public facing. So for example, there's a group, our neurodiverse group. Somebody that's neurodiverse may not have public-facing skills, but they have the skills we need to do the job. They're perfect for the job. Some do, though. Some that we're going to look to be in leadership roles. So there are other skills that need to be teased out and assessed, whether they be communication skills, whether they be leadership skills, whether they be problem-solving skills, whether they be critical thinking skills. Now, these are not teased out in 8140. But I'm putting forth the argument they can and should be in some respect. This is the research part of it. We've got to get our head around that. And the final piece I want to leave you with is the challenge for this group. What about aptitude and what about attitude? Who has been a hiring manager? Okay, and you do your interviews and you're giving them the sniff test and you're asking them questions. I'm putting forth the argument, whether you would acknowledge it or not, you're often trying to tease out some of those other softer skills in addition to discerning their technical skills. So that has to be, assessed. And, I'm going to get this quote wrong. I'm going to end on this quote. Not all that could be counted counts. Not all that counts can be counted. So while we're trying to objectify this as much as we possibly can, we want this to be fair, we want this to be equitable, we want to tear down the barriers for those that have not been able to get that job. We do have to acknowledge that there are things that are not currently captured in frameworks like DCWF, like the NICE framework, that are perhaps as important and in some cases even more important. That's an open research question. Mark assures me they're working that issue because as a hiring manager,
11:58.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. Please connect me on LinkedIn. You're all awesome. Take care.